What we know is that Pine Tree Power could cost as much as $13.5 billion to Maine ratepayers. And what that means is that Mainers are going to be taking on a $13.5 billion debt that has to be repaid on people's electric bills. And what we found from independent analysis is that this is likely to increase consumers' electric rates on day one.
Can you go into a little bit of the minutia of that analysis that you feel supports your argument?
Sure. So what we know is when something like this happens through the use of eminent domain, it will result in years of litigation, which will end up increasing the valuation of the utilities. So through the 10+ year acquisition period, the value of the assets will go up, meaning that it could cost anywhere between $10 billion to over $13.5 billion. In other places where there have been these municipal takeovers, the acquisition cost has been even higher than projections. So it's reasonable to assume that it could cost more than $13.5 billion.
Okay. There is some argument that ratepayers could see a savings up front. Is it your contention that they will not?
What we see from the London Economic Institute, which is an independent analysis not hired by either campaign, and the state's public advocate, whose job is to advocate for Maine consumers, is that rates will increase on day one. There's no world in which there's savings on day one because people have to pay a for-profit operator under the Pine Tree Power system, and they have to pay this $13.5 billion debt plus the interest on day one.
And just to clarify for folks, the eminent domain issue is that is how the CMP and Versant assets will be seized through this use of eminent domain, which is likely to breed litigation.
Yeah, there's
in the courts. Yeah.
There's a lot of analysis that says that this may not even be constitutional. And Maine's public advocate has indicated that there could be 5 to 10 years worth of litigation over the constitutionality and over the acquisition price.
And that's litigation that the cost of which could or would be passed on to consumers.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And so the other arguments that you folks have made against this have to do with the risk involved or the ambiguity. Talk a little bit about your arguments in terms of the ambiguity.
Sure. So Pine Tree Power is a $13.5 billion plan, or pardon me, Pine Tree Power is a $13.5 billion proposal that doesn't even include an operations plan for how the grid will be run. It doesn't include an operations plan on how they'll respond to storms and power outages. And it has nothing in the initiative that has a plan for how we will transition to meet our climate goals.
Okay. In terms of the plan, there's some talk about they'll elect the board and continue to build that plan. Why do you disagree with that philosophy?
If you're running a small business and you want to go to a bank for a loan, the bank asks for a business plan in order to grant that loan. What Pine Tree Power is doing is they are asking for a loan of upwards of $13.5 billion without a business plan and without an operations plan. And it's a gamble of billions of dollars, and we don't even know what it will look like on day one.
I read through the legislation and it does say, moving on to sort of the government side of things, the assertion that this will be a government or quasi-government run organization. So your argument is that it would be. The legislation says that these individuals can't be state lawmakers. So when you folks refer to these individuals who will run this board as politicians, is it simply because they will technically be elected, that they won't all just be appointed?
Yeah, the Pine Tree Power Board is partially composed of elected politicians that will have to run for office, which means they will have to raise money and there will be outside interests that are trying to elect them and influence it. And in our opinion, there is no room to add partisan politics into how we keep our lights on.
Okay. I asked this of the yes on 3 side. So I'll ask you, we have about a minute to a minute and a half left. Are there any other final points that you would like to make in this sort of short segment opportunity to state your side?
Sure. Question 3 is an incredibly risky proposal, and it has brought together a coalition of uncommon allies, whether it be current Democratic Governor Janet Mills or former Republican Governor Paula Page. Both agree that question 3 is too risky. We have business organizations like the State Chamber of Commerce and labor organizations like the Maine AFL-CIO, who agree that this is bad for business and bad for workers.